Hello. Shut up, lady. I don't know why it does that now. It keeps saying recording in progress. I just haven't checked whether it picks up on the actual record. I hope it does. Otherwise, I sound like a lunatic. Anyway, hello and welcome back to Sam's podcast. I'm joined with John for episode 63. I think we're getting up there now. The numbers are going up.
Booyakasha, what is up with your bad self?
Not too much. I'm back home now, properly. So this is going to be the base of operation for the next 20 episodes or however many weeks it is before.
Yeah, I can tell it doesn't look like you're in student digs, and it looks like you're properly bathed and clothed, etc. So yeah, you're clearly back home.
Yes, as I always do the podcast new whenever I'm in it's all CGI. All the clothes are put in after the fact. That's how.
No, I said properly bathed and clothed. You know, you can be clothed like a student, right? I'm just going to shut that off actually because that's one of my chat windows that keeps bleeping away. And you know, we're in a couple of group chats where people don't actually shut the hell up. Yep. So I'm just going to mute those.
Yep.
Let's find out what that's come from.
My phone's on vibrate, so should be.
Well, that's not that's not my phone. That's my laptop.
Yeah, I can tell. But I just because normally I've got Facebook closed, so normally my phone just starts bleeping.
No, it's not Facebook. It's a messenger app.
Oh wow! Is there a messenger app for the computer? No, I didn't know it was a thing.
Yeah, you can get a messenger app for you can get a messenger app for Mac.
Wow, that's insane.
You know, well, yeah. I mean, it allows you to do more. It allows you to kind of mute things and stuff. And
I'll have to invest.
I don't watch it.
Yeah, well, I'll invest in Facebook. Zuckerberg needs the money, clearly.
Yeah, quite clearly.
Yeah, well, this is also, I think, the 21st episode of the YouTube video podcast. Obviously, you're part of the first one, which was Guide into the Galaxy. And now 20 episodes later, 20 weeks ago that was, by the way, mate, which sounds mental that we talked about Guide into the Galaxy / Royal Rumble. How time flies.
Yeah, I mean, time flies when you're
That's the start of the year, and now we're here in late May.
We are, yes, we are here indeed in late May. Indeed,
and I think this goes out on the 31st. But I'm checking the calendar. But
on a bank holiday Monday, indeed.
Exactly. So you guys can be enjoying what you're doing.
You actually dragged me out to podcast on a bank holiday Monday.
I can't believe it.
I mean, I should get overtime rates, but then of course the only person that actually gets paid for appearances is Gallifrey Forever 97. So
yes, and that's begrudgingly because otherwise he won't come on the show. So.
Yeah, overtime rates would, 150% of fuck all is fuck all. So it's.
I couldn't have put it better myself, Matt. I couldn't put it better myself. Right. So obviously this week, as you see by the title, anyone listening, we're talking about Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. But I thought I'd bring out something which has come under fire. Because I know me and John are close to this, this person. John Cena has come under scrutiny. I don't know whether you've seen this online, John. Have you seen it at all? Because he's kind of dug himself a massive grave.
I've seen I kind of saw an element of it and I was like, I'm not even gonna engage with that.
It's weird.
So he dug himself a massive grave and it's not actually a buried alive match against The Undertaker.
Nope. And Paul Bearer, unfortunately, will not be.
What's he done? What's he said? How ridiculous is
this? He said the right thing first of all. So what he initially said in the thing was fine. He didn't have to apologize for it, but So he was promoting Fast and Furious 9, and he said, "Oh, I can't wait for it to come to the country of Taiwan, first because Taiwan are going to get it first." And then the Chinese government were like, "Whoa, Taiwan ain't no country." And then I guess either he was like, "Oh crap, the Chinese government and the Chinese land are going to give us the most big, obviously Hollywood over there is massive. I think like Fast and Furious as well." So he had to backtrack and say Taiwan is not a country. Many apologies to the people of China. And obviously that pissed off people like Taiwan people, Hong Kong, people that just know what's right within the world. So essentially he was correct. at least in my political view, and then he backtracked to make it bent to the Chinese.
Okay, okay. Now, here's my kind of thing on this, right? If the premiere was, say, in Edinburgh, and he had said the country of Scotland, I genuinely don't think that the rest of the UK would have gone, oh, no, with the UK, because Scotland is indeed also a country in its own right. It may not be a sovereign state, but it's also a country in its own right. So I really don't get the kind of, I mean, surely the apology makes the situation worse than actually saying something that in many people's view will be a legitimate thing to say in the first place. I mean,
it was the apology that caused
the only reason he's apologized is because there's 2 billion people in China and he wants them all to go and see his film. And the Chinese government won't promote it unless he does. I mean, this may, of course, now mean that the Timeless podcast is blacklisted in China, where I don't know what our following is like out there.
I mean, I mean, this might get wrong, but isn't Doctor Who banned in China anyway because of time travel and stuff? And they have rules about ghosts and time travel and stuff. So I think it's banned anyway. So I think most of them are outreach.
I mean, if it's banned for any reason, it'll be banned because of the talents of Wen Chiang. But
we've not got to that bit yet. You've not got there yet.
When you do the talents of Wen Chiang, please can I be involved in that particular?
Of course, yeah. Me and Owen will bring you on whenever it comes about. If our randomizer ever picks talons,
I'll give you a list of, like, say, my top 20 stories, all of which I want you to bring me on for if you do them. Because obviously we did Robots of Death together, and I know that I did my kind of drunken 5 minutes on Invasion of the Dinosaurs that I then completely forgot about.
So the best thing about that was when I told you about it after it went up, and you went, "What? I didn't do that." And I went, "Yeah, you did."
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest, and because we have to be open and honest with our listeners, I don't religiously listen to every single episode, and so when I found out that there was one that I was on that I wasn't aware of, I went back and listened to it.
And you were surprised that I didn't crap on it. You were happy I didn't crap on it.
Yeah, when I say I don't listen to every single episode, I mean I don't listen to it sort of religiously. I'll play catch up and, like, have a little bit of a binge every now and then. There may be certain subjects that just don't appeal to me, and so I won't.
Yeah, well,
the Doctor Who and MCU stuff I'll always listen to.
Yeah, exactly, and But yeah, I mean, the good thing is that I can announce as well while I'm here. And John mentioned coming in for other things.
I was just going to say, actually, there may even be certain contributors I avoid listening to, and you're all now sitting there thinking, "Is it me? Is it me? Is it me?" It might be.
It might be me. You might just every time I start.
No, speaking, I can't avoid listening to you.
Yeah, it's a travesty, isn't it?
Either in the podcast or in real life.
Yeah, it's a travesty. But my big plans for Infinity War and Endgame is to get everyone that's been a part of the Marvel review on those two podcasts. So
I'd really love to do that. Are they going to be like a single podcast for?
No, there'll be two. Whether we do it all in one session when I break it up, or
I mean, like Endgame in particular, I think warrants two separate podcasts for it. But obviously your baby, up to you what you do with it. But I think
I'd love whether we do it in like the same session, but like it was going to be a sort of thing where I break it up, only because then it helps me get my podcast numbers up, and there's two different shows, which means two different view camps.
Yeah, and there's a lot of content to go through.
Yeah, otherwise it would be rushing through it.
It would be like it'd be like a 4-hour long podcast, and it'd still be rushed. And
there's a whole lot of movie.
Yeah, there was a whole lot of movie there
as well. Unfortunately, again, we're going to quickly talk some wrestling. So WWE fans will be back in mid-July. They're going to be starting touring again, and they're going to begin in Houston, Texas. I mean, it feels sort of scary to think that, but the way we are with the world right now, and especially in the US and things like the UK with the vaccine stuff, it's weird that we're at this point where we can kind of do this in a weird way, isn't it?
I mean, I kind of agree with you, but then you look over here, like fans are back in football stadiums now. Not full capacity, but fans are back in football stadiums now.
It makes all the
Like
difference.
the world, the World Snooker Championship was recently, and like for the final, they managed to fit everybody in the theatre. So yeah, it feels a bit strange, but yeah, I mean, in terms of the football crowds, I mean, there were a couple of things that happened, and it's like, God, I've missed crowds. I think during the cup final, one of the Chelsea players took a shot and it went flying over the bar, and you just kind of heard the Leicester crowd go, "Whee!" And it's like, I've missed that. And yeah, Tottenham being booed off by their own fans after losing at home, I've missed that as well.
Obviously, as a big West Ham supporter, congratulations to you and the great club.
Yes, indeed, we are all going on a European tour,
baby. But I think it's also the interesting thing for WWE is different is the current storylines that they're working with. How are the crowds going to react to those? Will they pivot? Because there was obviously WrestleMania. Everybody had WrestleMania fever. I think people were just going to cheer anything they saw anyway. Even Bad Bunny. I mean, Bad Bunny, by the way, did a great job. No, as we spoke on this podcast, no disrespect to Bad Bunny, but
you've got to look at things like the Army of the Dead lumberjack match.
That caused a lot of controversy. Did you enjoy it or did you not?
Kind of say to yourself, how would that have played in front of a live crowd?
Oh, they would have shat on it.
I mean, okay, I didn't really like the match, but at the same time, has it made me want to see the film? Well, yeah, actually, because I was kind of like, okay, I was kind of like, I can take this either way, but it's actually made me look into the film a bit more and get quite invested in it. So I'm probably going to watch that over the weekend. So I think it's done its job in that regards in terms of like promoting the film. But yeah, I mean, as a wrestling match, let's face it, was cack.
Yeah, it would have been okay if the Miz and Morrison didn't sell them as zombies. If like, what is this?
Yeah.
It would have made it a lot better, a lot more interesting.
Hilariously, given what's coming up on Raw next Monday, it may actually not be the worst match on WWE television this month.
Hang about. That's going to be the best match. 5 stars. 5 stars for that.
Oh, just for anybody who is in doubt, we are not here referring to the number 1 contenders match. We are referring to Shayna versus Reginald.
Which, by the way, will be tonight when this podcast goes out. So get excited.
And I mean, although technically it will be June in the UK, like where it is still May.
So, but it's gonna. I think, yeah. For me, I think the Thunderdome, it was cool, and that was sort of wearing thin. I think after you've been to WrestleMania and you had fans back, I think when you went back to the Thunderdome, that's when it really felt a bit. Oh.
I think they've done what they can with it now. I mean, we had the Sheamus versus Drew match at Fastlane, which really utilized the Thunderdome really well. And there were 2 or 3 matches that utilized the Thunderdome really well, actually had them out among the screens and using the screens as weapons and stuff like that. And it worked really well. But I think that they've utilized it as much as they can now.
I vividly remember it with you. I think it was Royal Rumble, actually. It was Roman versus Kevin Owens, but they had so many matches, I can't pinpoint what show it was, where like Kevin Owens ran Roman Reigns over with a golf cart and stuff. It was the last man standing, I think. And
yeah, that was a Rumble.
Yeah, that was probably the best use of the Thunderdome for me. Either that or the whole Randy Orton, Bray Wyatt gets burnt thing. That was cool from TLC as well. But I think they need to stop the Alexa Bliss stuff because I think that will go down horribly in front of a crowd because I think people are done with the whole mystical.
Yeah, but there's reasons for that. Obviously there are backstage reasons why the Fiend isn't appearing at the moment.
Absolutely.
And so they're having to kind of carry that storyline on for however they can. And I think actually I've got to commend, I mean, I'm not going to go into the detail of it here, but if anybody wants to find out, you can quite easily Google it and find out what's going on with the Fiend. But I have to commend WWE for actually supporting him and giving him the time that he needs.
I think that was the big thing once we found that out. Because I think everyone watched WrestleMania and was like,
Like, yeah, and I mean,
what did we just see?
Me and you on this podcast were like, we were really looking forward to that, and I don't actually know what's gone on there. And looking at it with hindsight, we should probably have realised that actually not everything was well.
Yeah, it's just within those moments. Obviously, you don't look at it through that.
The thing is, WWE have screwed things up so much and so often that you do just go, oh well, they cut that one up, and you don't look for an alternative reason for it. But I think actually in this case, it's great that they're looking after Bray, and it's grief is a very horrible thing, particularly when you lose somebody unexpectedly. It's a very horrible thing, and it's great that they're giving him all the time and support that he needs. So the Alexa thing is kind of out of necessity to a degree. Hopefully fans will understand that and not shut up too much.
I just think, and this is me coming from the perspective as a viewer, if you just candle the mystery stuff for now, and then when Bray is better, however long it takes, obviously you can't put time on grief, it's not like an injury where you give him, but like then when he comes back and it comes back with a fury, it's be a lot better. I think the issue with it is the Alexa Bliss stuff isn't going anywhere. She just does a promo each week and goes, "Look at my creepy doll." So what's going on?
But I mean, I can spend my whole life watching Alexa Bliss promos. Let's face it.
Absolutely. I just wanted to come back to that conniving heel again and win a belt. That'd be great.
Which I mean could happen because Nikki Cross was back on Raw this week. So they could use that as a way. They could use that as a way to leave her Alexa back into somewhat of her old gimmick, like
I hope so.
Going with her ex-tag partner.
I hope so. Yeah, for sure. I always found it weird that this stuff started out with the Braun Strowman feud, which I sort of forgot was a thing, and it's led all the way to here. So I mean,
I very often forget that Braun Strowman is a thing.
Ouch.
I'm sorry.
No, I don't. I don't disagree with you. I don't disagree. Let's use a Braun Strowman. Let's use a Braun Strowman term. Let's use a Braun Strowman term. The train left the station a few years ago.
Yeah. I mean, this push that they've been giving him, he should have been getting that in 2017.
Yeah, it's just it makes no sense. And also some other sad news today is that WWE announced the release of Tom Phillips, who obviously was the play-by-play guy on Raw, and I think SmackDown first, then Raw. He's now gone, which is a bit weird as well because they also got rid of Adnan or whatever. What I forget, I can't pronounce his name. Adnan Virk, who was the other guy on Raw for a bit. He's now gone. So who knows?
Samoa Joe's gone as well. So a lot of commentary on.
Yeah. That quote from John will forever live in infamy about the future of Samoa Joe in WWE, and then literally not 2 weeks later. Was it something like that? It was very quick.
It was literally days. It was literally days. I think by the time the podcast was released, it might have already bloody happened.
Yep. That was the thing that happened. But yeah,
if I was Nostradamus, I'd be a bookie.
Yeah, it's a good way of putting it. Like Biff from Back to the Future, to be like, get yourself all that money. But I think this is an opportunity for WWE to experiment with two-man commentary teams again. Obviously, we got Michael and good old Pat McAfee on SmackDown. I think that works. Also, I think
that worked really well. Actually,
I think SmackDown is actually just a show week to week that I enjoy watching.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I'm back into the habit of skipping through the significant chunks of Raw right now.
SmackDown, on the other hand, is just consistently.
Yeah, I'll watch SmackDown, but I'm back into the habit of skipping through significant chunks of Raw
because it's the same thing every week.
It's not going anywhere really. So I'll tune into the start and I might watch the first match or two. Like this week, I watched the number one contenders match, and then I'll skip through to the end. And
Yeah,
seem
and obviously it's very clear the wheels are turning until fans come back, and then we can get that Brock Lesnar Bobby Lashley match, which obviously Bobby's talking about how much he wants to have that match, and it's so very clear now that WWE are in talks with Brock for that match.
I think Brock's going to be. I think Brock's going to be back to when he's sucking Money in the Bank in front of a crowd.
No, yeah, for the first, I remember the first time it wasn't even in the match. I was like, if you could do that, why has nobody ever done that before in the history or since? You know what?
No,
Why didn't?
I think they'll do a proper match with a proper setup,
Yeah.
which means Money in the Bank won't be involved. But
I wonder whether that means that Roman will drop Heyman, or Brock will go in alone without Paul, which would be
I
rather
mean,
interesting.
where they left it with Brock and Heyman was very much like they had split. But
I can't remember what happened.
But yeah, that it was kind of acrimonious. But as we've said several times before, Roman doesn't need Heyman.
Nope.
I think they'll probably play it for a few weeks in front of a crowd, just to see how Roman's mic work goes in front of a crowd. But all being well, I think we could very well see Brock back with Heyman, because Roman's got a lot of momentum behind him now.
Yep.
He's the best thing the company have got at the moment.
Oh Christ, yeah. I like. There's no doubt.
It's just about whether he can transfer those mic skills that he's using in an empty arena into a crowd-based environment, which is.
I reckon as a heel he can do it. I reckon that.
Yeah.
Well, I reckon he's going to get cheered.
It's been a problem. I mean, it's been a problem before, but I don't think it necessarily will this time.
Yeah, I reckon in front of the crowd as well, he'll get cheered. My issue is that if they play it like Brock is on Raw, so Heyman's with him on Raw, and he's with Roman on SmackDown, because to me that wouldn't suit either character. Because to me, Roman and Brock, first of all, they don't like each other, but second of all, they want to be the top dog, the head of the table, as it were. So like to share Heyman, I feel that they'd be like, nah, I don't know.
What happens when you get something like a Royal Rumble? Where they could, or a Survivor Series where they could effectively be.
Imagine if that's the thing though. WWE champion Brock Lesnar versus Universal champion Roman Reigns with Paul Heyman in the middle, or special guest ref. Maybe that's the plan. Maybe I've just predicted the future.
Could be, yeah. If we're sitting here in 6 months' time in November and building up to Survivor Series, and that's on the cards, then well done, sir. You are as mental as Vince McMahon.
That will also be rather funny. it's like a weird WWE like romance story of like, who does Heyman's heart really lie to? The beast he once loved.
Yeah, and then he ends up walking off into the sunset with Karrion Kross.
Or like, who else could we bring back? I'm
just assuming that Kross would be NXT champion by that point.
Or Riddle. Imagine if Riddle and Heyman were together, bro.
Yeah, I think that's quite an unlikely pairing.
I think they're entirely opposite. I have to say though, fair play to Riddle, because RK Bro, it's working for me.
Yeah, it's kind of. He's turned me around on him a little bit since WrestleMania. I don't necessarily like the guy, but I can actually watch him now. Yeah, he's turned it around for me a little bit since WrestleMania. And I have to say, also, it's great to see Jinder Mahal back in WWE.
Oh, yeah. I think when people shout, I really liked his actual WWE title reign. I thought it was good because it was so unexpected, and I like those sorts of things. I
love those kind of sneaky heels where they're continually cheating victories. It's what a heel's supposed to do.
Again, and I think as well, that's why I really like Sami Zayn now. But I also really wanted to go back to being that babyface again at some point, because he's very good at both of them. And obviously now we've lost Daniel Bryan, and who knows when he'll next show up, whether it be in AEW, whether he just doesn't bother to come back. I think he will, though. I don't think he's done entirely. But it's going to be I think Jinder Mahal's a very good heel. I think as well, for example, I think he'd be very good in the title, if obviously, because the issue is there's two heels on Raw at the minute. But say we get a babyface US champion eventually when Sheamus drops it, which I don't want to happen because Sheamus is my boy. But I reckon that he'd be a great first opponent for a new champion. But like, I was a WWE champion, I earned my way up. I could destroy you in seconds,
Yeah.
But
You can see him going against one of the younger guys and really kind of
like a Carrillo or a Ricochet, or
I was thinking Ricochet actually, sort of using that kind of or even a Riddle, to be honest, using that kind of experience and painting himself as the guy that's paid his dues against somebody who hasn't, sort of thing, and sort of using his privilege in that way. I
yeah,
think
for sure. It's really interesting right now that our four main champions in WWE are heels, because obviously you've got Apollo on SmackDown with Commander Aziz, and I love that. I think he's great. I think he's great. Obviously, you've got the head of the table, Mr. Roman Reigns, who has been amazing. You've got Bobby Lashley, who is actually great. And I'm happy that they kind of kept the belt on him. And then you've got Sheamus, who is the GOAT. He's not the GOAT, but he's one of my favorites. But yeah,
then you look at the women's division, and it's all baby faces.
Yep, Bianca, Rhea. Although Bailey, I love Bianca, but when I see Bailey in a promo, I'm like, she's the best. She deserves to just have that belt forever.
Yeah, I'm still very confused by Natalia and Tamina as tag champions.
And now they're babyface. When were they baby faces? When did they turn babyface? I'm so confused.
I mean, Natty's always been kind of a bit of a babyface.
But she always flip flops because she goes from like, oh, yeah, I'm so here for the fans. I'm related to Bret Hart to go in. I'm related to Bret Hart. Respect me because I'm related. It's like she'll flip flop it either way, whatever she likes.
Yeah, I mean the thing is, it's a tricky one. We've consulted with our lawyers, or I won't say too much. It's a tricky one because obviously in the current tag team situation, she can't sit there and go, "I'm related to Bret Hart," because Tamina then goes, "I'm related to." Oh shit.
Yeah. Oh no.
Kid, we can't say anymore. Google it.
Yeah. If you really want to,
Google it, but you may never look at one of your heroes in the same light again. I know I didn't.
Yeah. For good reason.
Yeah.
And our last bit.
I'm a man who likes to be barefoot too.
Who doesn't? Especially if you're in your own place. Why not? Right. This is our last bit of news. John, we've spoken about video games in the past. Do you like wrestling video games?
I do, but not necessarily recent ones.
Because
WWE has had its issues in the past.
Oh god, yeah.
I am quite enjoying Battleground, although I'm not really sure I count that as a wrestling video game. It's more of a kind of beat 'em up than anything else.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I'm one of these annoying people that's kind of the view that the epoch of video game wrestling was SmackDown Here Comes the Pain in 2003 and WWE 2K11.
For me, I would
11, whichever
I would say for me, my favorite, because it was just when I was like a kid. I vividly remember getting it for Christmas. Was WWE 13. This was the height of like CM Punk, WWE champion, all that kind of stuff. So, I mean, and Sheamus World Heavyweight champion, that sort of thing, which kind of defined my childhood. But yeah, so it's looking like we're going to get a September release for 2K22. It hits different. It better fucking do, because the last game hit like a cup of sick.
I hope that they've taken the time away to actually look at it and look at all of the problems that were there with the last edition and rectify them.
Yep, I really hope so. Because they need it. But by the way, I need to put something. Does anyone know when that Doctor Who game's coming out? That they said was going to be spring 2021, and now we've just heard nothing.
It was supposed to be spring.
It's not even up for pre-order.
Not even seen a trailer. I think I looked on the Nintendo store maybe about a month ago. couldn't see anything on there. It's all gone very quiet. But
Should I
then
do some quick Googling?
promo for all kinds of current era Doctor Who stuff is quiet at the moment.
So yeah, it's called The Edge of Reality, isn't it?
It is.
Let's have a look, see if there's any news. Nope, nothing since December.
Yeah.
We had a video game developer say David Tennant is such an amazing actor. But apart from that, and that was the leader of May's Theory who said that. But
yeah, but that yeah. I mean, you look around the stores, you look around Amazon, you look around Nintendo store. There's nothing out there. It'll come. I mean, it's certainly not coming in spring 2021, but yeah, it'll come. But then there are other things coming up and in the pipeline to keep Doctor Who fans happy.
like Time Fracture, which we will both be at.
Both of us will be there. Well, as this podcast is being broadcast this
Friday.
week. Yeah, I wasn't going to go into specific dates.
We won't say what time.
We won't say what time, because obviously, although it's a X amount of money a ticket to get in, some Doctor Who fans can be a bit weird and a bit stalky.
And look, we understand Sparky's a big celebrity, but you can't just go up to him and ask for an autograph, right? You got to wait your turn.
You can't. The last thing we want is to be in the pub over the road, whenever it finishes, and to be approached by our groupies. Wanting to ask us questions and stuff. So yeah, none of that. But yeah, so we will be there. We will be there this week at some point
on my 20th birthday.
We'll be there on Friday to celebrate Alex Kingdom's 20th birthday. Well, not specifically to celebrate it. It's just a nice coincidence. I didn't even know when I booked my ticket that it was his birthday that day. Although it would be, it does also mean that this coming Saturday is the anniversary of one of the most legendary occurrences of lockdown last year. Our contributor Rhys Jenkins throwing up in his own bathroom and being vocally abused by his mother.
What would have been two. The whole thing was it was incredibly early because he got incredibly drunk very early on.
He was dropping shots of vodka into pints of cider. It didn't end well. But the funny thing was he turned his camera off, but hadn't actually logged out of the particular Zoom meeting. And so we were all sort of sat there awkwardly hearing his mother admonishing him.
Yep.
And sort of going, do you think we should just boot him from the meeting? It's a bit awkward. But yeah, so happy Jenkins-versary for this week as well.
Happy Jenkins-versary.
But yeah, Time Fracture. I'm looking forward to it. Obviously, they've now announced that all of the Doctors are going to be involved, either in person or through various voice actors. Which is great. And it's really great to actually see people get excited about it as well, because we've been waiting years.
I think as well it's really good for Doctor Who because you see it all over the London buses and things like that. It's every
it's some real proper publicity, and we haven't actually seen publicity like that probably since series 11.
Yeah, because we got nothing for series 12.
So we haven't sort of seen publicity like that since series 11. So it's really nice to actually see it on the side of buses, see people talking about it, see fans getting excited about it. I mean, I've seen a lot of quite a few sort of contacts and friends of mine have sort of said, oh yeah, they're going next week, or they're going over the next few weeks, or they're going next month. And yeah, it's just going to be something really nice.
It's exciting to plan for the future as well. It's exciting to be like, oh yeah, I can do this thing in like a few weeks.
Yeah, I mean, I just hope that the kind of spoilers keep off of Twitter and stuff, and people are a bit respectful, because I mean, I know of people who aren't going until kind of July, so I'm going to
But
keep very light on the detail unless I'm talking to people that I know have been.
yeah, you know, I think that's the main thing. I think, you know, people aren't as respectful of spoilers these days as perhaps you know, they should be. And obviously, look, I understand, because I was one of those people that came out of Avengers Endgame when it first came out, and I really wanted to talk about everyone. But I was also one of those people that, because I was such a big fan, I went midnight when it was released. So I went into college the next day, and me and my friend who went together knew everything, and we knew everything, but we knew we had to keep our mouths shut. And so, like, it was this, we go, this was really, and we couldn't do it. It was like one of the, because obviously nobody wanted to spoil Endgame. I mean, I went like another 10 times because I was that much of a saddo. But it's, yeah, honestly, I don't know, mate. It was an experience. But now we've linked it back to Marvel. Did you see the Eternals teaser?
I went once. I'll be honest. I only went once.
Is that a sign of John's opinions on the film? You have to wait till later on.
No, I tend to let them kind of sink in. I think the only film that I've seen in a cinema more than once, I saw Captain Marvel twice because I wanted to do a full MCU rewatch
Makes sense.
before Endgame, and Captain Marvel was still out in the cinema, so I saw that again the week before I saw Endgame.
Yep. Yeah, makes sense. Did you watch the Eternals teaser that came out a few days ago, or like a week ago since?
I will admit I have not.
You're not missing too much because it's just a teaser, so it's just like a few
Okay.
images. There's not much story detail.
Okay.
So it's, you know, it's interesting as well that, you know, we can get excited about the future of going to cinema. Like, I'm fairly sure, unless something else, because obviously release dates are a bit up in the air for certain things. Black Widow might be my return to going to the cinema, which is gonna be pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, I've actually had my return. I was at
Yes, you did.
I was at the British Film Institute on Saturday to see Billy Piper's directorial debut, Rare Beasts, which I continually see and want to say Rare Breasts. And she even put up an Instagram post on it the other day saying a number of people seem to be misreading it as Rare Breasts. But yeah, I saw Rare Beasts last Saturday at the BFI with a Q&A with the delightful Miss Piper herself. And it's just a really good film, and it just felt great to be back in a cinema. The BFI have kind of done certain things around distancing. They've literally removed like 2 out of 3 seats. So the great thing about that was there was some space down next to me for Sparky to actually come in and just kind of nestle down next to me while I watched the film, whereas normally he wouldn't come into an auditorium with me.
Well, big question is, did Sparky enjoy the film though? I mean, what was his thoughts?
What was Sparky's thoughts? He was quite calm during the film. He quite audibly had a drink of water about halfway through. I think he chewed up one of their polystyrene sort of things that they were using to block off the seats. But yeah, he was generally good, generally quite well engaged and enjoyed himself. The only problem is that whenever there was a round of applause, he thinks it's for him and he jumps up. And you know, and the thing with the BFI is, you know, particularly if there's a Q&A, there will be applause after the film.
Yeah.
You know, so
Only because the actual filmmakers are there, so you know, usually.
Yeah, but I mean, it's something that generally happens anyway. I mean, when I saw
Because we're off to the BFI as well.
gosh, a few Christmases ago, I saw It's a Wonderful Life at the BFI because it's my
That's
favourite film.
amazing.
My favourite
Oh,
all time.
I'm
A few
jealous.
a few Christmases ago, I saw it there, and there was a round of applause after that. And I can guarantee you, know, that the filmmakers were there because they're all dead. But sorry, I shouldn't have said that when you were halfway through a mouthful of drink. So Alex Kingdom's just choking in a corner. So yeah, it was really good. And as Alex was saying, we are back at the BFI in a few weeks' time because they are screening the Sylvester McCoy classic. And I've done the little thing with my fingers as I've said that because it's a matter of opinion.
Yeah.
Dragonfire
I've never seen it.
to commemorate the season. Yeah, to commemorate the season 24 collection release. So
Which you've now got a date for, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yes, it's the 21st of June. It's the 21st of June. It's due out. So all of you McCoy, Langford, Aldred fans, if you like a bit of Richard Bryars, if you like a bit of Ken Dodd, if you like a bit of Ronnie, I would say go and order yourself a copy, but I think all the pre-orders are probably sold out now. But get yourself onto eBay and buy one at an extortionate price from a scalper.
Yes, that's unfortunately that's the lie of the land now. I mean, yeah, I'm saving myself.
It is, although to be fair, a lot of the they are re-releasing a lot of the previous ones now, because I think they announced today that season 18 and season 10 are both getting a re-release in July in the non-limited packaging.
Yes,
So like they
standard packaging.
Yeah, so like they did with season 12, they're doing some re-releases now, so people can still get the content. Which is good. And
also, just to let you know, don't shout at me, because listeners, just in case. But while we're filming this on the 27th of May, you can still pre-order season 24 from HMV. So
there you go. Get in there.
Because I believe as well, there's
obviously
tons of like bonus footage, right? Like extended editions.
Obviously, yeah. I mean, it's 4 stories, and I think it's like 7 discs. So there's going to be a stack of stuff on there. Obviously, as this is broadcast, the pre-orders might have gone. So please don't shout at us.
Yeah.
Well, particularly not us, because I didn't say it, but don't shout at Alex either. But yeah, it's, if you can, get out there, because actually the special features are always brilliant on these things. I mean, I'm still working my way through season 8, and that's a couple of months old. I'm still working my way through the special features on that. But you know, they are so clearly made with love, by people who love the show, for people who love the show. I've been really lucky in that I've managed to get everyone on release, on pre-order. I've not missed out on one yet. So I've been really lucky in that, and they're always just a treat, to be honest. So if it is possible at all, do try to get yourself a copy. I'll just mute myself momentarily. Sorry.
And that's right, mate. Don't worry about it. I'm trying to think which box sets I missed out on. Which I didn't get season 12, the original. I had to wait for the re-release. So I missed out on that one. I luckily got season 19 and season 10 by going into HMV, and they were just there. So and then the first one I actually pre-ordered was this first, so season 26. So I had to get one Tom Baker one, which was season 18. And I also had to get which one did I have to get? The Colin Baker one. Those were the 2 that I had to get from scalpers. Trial, the trial time ones, yeah. So I had to get those 2 from scalpers. But apart from that, I've had every single one as well.
So you're probably quite offended that season 18 is now being re-released in the standard packaging.
No, because I wouldn't have got it. I would have preferred to have it in. I like the big box packaging. I think it makes the sets feel grander.
I have heard this.
And things like that. So yeah, I'm a big fan of that.
Yeah, but yeah, that's if you can get yourselves a copy, try to do so. They are well worth it. I mean, in my view, it's not necessarily the best season of Who, but then I'm not the biggest McCoy fan going anyway. I'm all about the Pertwee. But just the amount of added packaging in there, and like, these are stories that I first saw on telly when I was about 10. So it'll be brilliant to see them with a sort of fresh outlook.
Whereas just a contrast, my first story was the Bears of St. John. So there you go. That's not even a lie. That's facts.
Fuck off.
Right, so we don't offend John any further.
Ageism right there for you on the Timeless podcast. Ageism.
Should we discuss? John's gonna, obviously got Taser face in the back. Should we discuss Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2? I'll give you a quick
I think we
lowdown.
Actually, yeah.
I'll give you a quick lowdown. What? Amazon is telling me sign-in is needed. What? Amazon is telling someone sign into my account. When? How weird. Who knows?
This is Alex Kingdom attempting to explain to his mum why butt plugs are going to be delivered to his house.
No, I just got an idea of how someone sent into your account. If this was you, just guys with us, please let us know.
I mean, what's the timestamp? Was it you?
Like this minute? It's in Bath and Somerset.
Then it wasn't you.
But it says also an Apple iPhone, which it could also be me.
But it wasn't you.
But it wasn't me.
You've not just signed into your Amazon account.
Thank you. It's the sign-in was denied.
Whilst Alex is presenting himself from being identity theft.
Well, there we go. I did just deny it. I mean, I'm going to change my Amazon password.
But yeah. So Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 released.
Yes, I do apologize for that. I almost got hacked.
Released in May 2017.
Was it May?
I think it was, yes, because I saw it around the time of my birthday, I'm pretty sure.
Damn.
Would you like me to verify?
No, I don't disagree. I mean,
no, I will.
On it says on Wikipedia 19th of April, but Ben, can you trust Wikipedia?
It may well have been. It was certainly out in May 2017. So an April release would confirm that.
Yeah, and if it obviously was directed by James Gunn.
The 10th of April was its release in Tokyo. United States was the 5th of May, so we would have been around the start of May. Probably same date.
Tokyo got it. Well, damn.
Yeah.
Who knew? Who knew, eh? So yeah, if you had to explain the plot of this film, what would you say it was about?
If I had to explain the plot of this film, what would you say it's about? Okay. Man with daddy issues resolves daddy issues by finding out that his daddy was there all along.
Yep.
I mean, we're probably wanting a little bit more than that for the actual podcast, but
that's like a brief reading.
Yeah, I mean that's the central crux of the. So we start off with obviously we know where we are from the Guardians of the Galaxy film part 1. You've got Quill, Gamora, Drax, Rocket, and the now baby group, because he regrew himself into a little baby. Traveling across the galaxy, acting as mercenaries, effectively. I actually really enjoy the opening to this with the opening credits, because obviously with the opening credits, you've got Baby Groot listening to the Walkman while they're slaying that mighty beast behind them, sort of thing. So that's all very clever. But yeah, it's just a brilliant adventure in space. So how do you want to do it? Do you want to go sort of start to finish, or just have a general overview?
I think that's the best thing to do with this film, because so much happens within it. It's one of those things where they're not only in some ways different to the first one, because the Guardians get split up, so there's sort of two storylines going on at once, and they're balanced. Whereas the first film was more of just a straight story following the Guardians with just a few scenes with the villains. But no, I think this film does a really good job at setting the tone. I mean, not only do you have the first proper good use of the young CGI thing with Kurt Russell looking impeccable. You couldn't tell that was CGI. Obviously, with the great song "Brandy, You're a Fine Girl," and you sort of get a bit of backstory with him and Meredith, and he takes us on to see this plant, which obviously you don't know the meaning of that plant at the time, but obviously that become clear what that plant is meant to be used for later on. It's a very simple opening of just you see them kind of their romance and their dynamic very quickly. But I think obviously it serves the whole narrative focus of this is about family and Peter's backstory and ego. You obviously don't know who he is at the time, but what you know is that he's Quill's dad. And like you said, then we go into one of the best opening title sequences in cinema history, and that's not me being hyperbole. It's great. ELO makes everything better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like the Love and Monsters of the MCU, but not shit. That's Love and Monsters, the Doctor Who episode I'm referencing there, which is full of ELO references.
Yeah, obviously, because what's his name? Is it Elton who likes ELO in that episode? Is that
it is, yeah, and he basically forms his own little band with his mates to play ELO songs.
Yeah. And obviously, what you need to remember with this film is only taking place a couple months after the original. So although it came out 3 years later, this is still technically in 2014, I suppose, in your MCU timeline. But yeah, so the team of they're gelling together now. They're doing missions, same people, and this time they're helping the Sovereign defend their Annulax batteries, not Hardulary batteries, in which Drax thinks it is all the time, which is a great joke that never gets boring. Drax in this film is sort of the best. I think this is peak Drax. I think in Infinity War they sort of overdid it because they just dumbed him down so much because obviously there was nothing for him to do. So they were like,
I do have epic turrets.
I do have famously huge turrets. And it's like the scene. I still always love the scene as well, where like he's thinking about being with Mantis sexually, and he just like throws up. It's just the best. But obviously, this fight kind of concludes when Drax just thinks, well, we can't cut through the beast on the outside because the skin is too thick. So I'll jump inside of it and cut the skin from the inside, which obviously,
because that's how skin works. It's tough on the outside and not on the inside. Everybody knows that.
He literally jumps into the belly of the beast. And then at the start, there's this very clever joke where Peter says to Gamora, "Oh, I thought you were the swords person. I was guns, but I guess we're both doing guns now." And actually, it turns out Gamora needs to use her sword because the only way to actually harm this beast is a little, weak spot on its neck. And she does this really cool jump up moment, and she slices the thing open. And of course, Drax thinks that he single-handedly vanquished the beast from the inside. And it's just a lot of fun, isn't it?
They literally split the beast top to bottom. And Drax comes out sort of covered in green shit, and it's just fun. It's just fun. It's the five of them bouncing off each other, really sharp dialogue, and just brilliant characterization. The way the five characters work together, it's just fun.
I think it also because as well for people who obviously aren't binging through the MCU like myself. Obviously, this was a 3-year gap from 2000, so it brings you back straight into the dynamic, tells you what every character's about, again, reminds you of their characteristics and how they act now, and sort of it brings you back to where they were at the end of the film. Because obviously, we didn't get to see much of this in the original film because they only really got together in the last half an hour, 25 minutes. So you get this straight away, and you get this really interesting scene with Aisha, who is the leader of the Sovereign, and she essentially wants to have sex with Peter for genetic reasons, and Peter's down for it until he realizes that actually no, Gamora's a bit jealous, and he goes, that would be disgusting. And then she kind of gives a subtle hint that maybe there's more to Peter's genetics than he might have thought. And she says it's quite a dangerous a duo of genes, and it kind of sets you up. What could he be? It's very interesting. And then obviously it turned into Rocket system at one of the best. People say you're considered douchebags, but I have to totally disagree. And he winks with the wrong eye so everyone can see, and he doesn't know how to wink, which is a thing that continues out throughout the whole film. And turns out that essentially they were doing this for the bounty of Nebula, so they've got Nebula back. And apparently, I think, obviously, because they're not actually in the film, I think the whole purpose of getting Nebula was to take her back to Xandar and the Nova Corps from the original film. But that don't work because Rocket steals the batteries that creates this weird fight.
Yeah. You can't trust that little trash panda.
And then we get And again, this is a little quirk. I mean, this thing about James Gunn is that he's full of quirks. Is what his films are about. But I like the fact that essentially the spaceships are like video games for the pilots, so they're not actually in the ships. They're just playing like this video game. If they die, they like power down. It goes boo, like kind of sort of like Pac-Man or something. And I think it's really cool. You get this really cool moment, like you said, like John said, with the turds moment where Rocket and Peter are arguing because they found out Rocket stole the batteries. And they're switching pilots as they have to go through this asteroid field, and it looks like they're about to die when this mysterious man destroys all the ships as they get towards the jump point, and then they had the biggest crash landing. But I think for me, this is one. Again, I enjoy this from top to bottom, but I think for me, the scene sets perfectly up why we deviate between two different plot lines, because Rocket and Peter are in two very different places as the film begins. You know, Peter's actually sort of matured a bit more from the original. He's not the most mature man in the universe, but he's obviously got the best intentions at heart. He wants to just live a normal life, make money, and get on with his day and help people. Whereas Rocket maybe still has this bit of like a asshole to him, where he still has this cheeky side and still wants to be a bit of a crook. And unfortunately, he cost them the ship and things like that. So this is kind of, it sets off his past, but also it's just a very entertaining fight with the asteroids and the guns, and the fact that there's always this joke of this fruit not being ripe that Nebula wants to eat, which kind of comes back later on in the film. And then we get Drax jumping out of the ship with a gun, single-handedly taking down the last ship. And I like the fact as well, the crowd of the sovereign people are like, come on, man, you can do it, you can kill him. And then when he dies, they're like, you're a joke, you're the worst. It's like, it's great stuff. But yeah, is there anything in particular from that sequence that you really like, or anything at all, or anything you take from it?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of obviously the appearance of the mysterious man just taking everything out is quite key to where we are going forward. But again, it's just the sort of interactions between them, the way that the different characters play off of each other. I just love.
Yeah, I think as well, because it sort of subverts your expectations. Because based on the first film, you might think it would be Peter in Rocket's position of being like wanting to be the hero, wanting to do just make it all about him. Well, actually, in this film, Peter's actually got the best intentions at heart and just wants to get through this because he's being gunned down by a bunch of sovereign, and they have like thousands, if okay, maybe a couple hundred, but if not thousands of ships raining down on this one ship. And yeah, it's really good. I like Gamora's reaction to everything. She's just done with everything. And I really like that. And I like the fact that as they're crashing, Groot's just enjoying some what looks like M&Ms, and fair play to baby Groot there, because why not?
Yeah, it's just out of a little tub and sorted.
And I mean, already at this point in the film, we've had three brilliant songs. We've had the start, Brandy, You're a Fine Girl, which kind of is the song that keeps coming back, and you know, it doesn't get played again, but they reference it a lot throughout the film as like this anchor point for Meredith and Ego's relationship. But also, at this point, you've had Lakeshore Drive and Mr. Blue Sky, which are all I mean, I'm of the opinion that both awesome mixtapes are great, but I slightly prefer the second one in terms.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I tend to agree. I think the soundtrack to the second one is slightly better.
I also think as well the one in the second serves more narrative purpose. Like whenever a song's played, it's played for a reason to aid the story along. Whereas in the first one, you get a few songs like that. However, sometimes they just go for these great, for example, when they're suiting up and Cherry Bomb plays, you're like, oh, this is great because it's a great suit up song. But what's the purpose? Whenever a song plays in this film, there's always like an underlined theme to it or why it's being.
It kind of fits in with the mood at the time.
And anyway, you get this amazing like campfire scene where they're all arguing, and you get the amazing Trash Panda moment where Peter and Rocket are still arguing. He goes, "Sorry, I didn't mean to call you raccoon. I meant Trash Panda." And then you get that moment where Rocket doesn't know how to react. He thinks it's like a nice compliment, and then Peter goes, "It's way worse." And then obviously you get the big surprise of Kurt Russell being Peter Quill's dad. It's you know, obviously the good thing about this film, and I'm happy again, is that it doesn't take Peter Quill as an idiot, because it still takes time for Peter to believe and kind of buy into the fact that this could be his dad. Because the one thing this film could have done has been like, Peter's really into it for the beginning and everyone else is apprehensive. Actually, no, it's Gamora that kind of convinces him that this could be his actual dad and he should go and find out rather than just write it off. I love the line. He goes, well, if he's not your dad, we'll just kill him anyway. I really like that stuff. And I really like the whole David Hasselhoff thing, or Zardu Hasselfrau, as she calls him. And I think it's a really sweet story and really grounds Peter's character. Because this is Peter's movie. Guardians of the Galaxy 1 was all about the whole team. Although obviously Peter was the anchor point and the leader. This is actually about his character, about who he is as a person, compared to him bringing a team together. And I think that scene where obviously Gamora talks about his childhood and the fact that he had this picture of David Hasselhoff in his wallet, and he tell kids that was his father and that his father's going on tours and stuff. That's why he's never around. I think it's a really sweet story and tells you a lot about Peter's character compared to in the first film, him being an incredibly funny character, but perhaps not a very sympathetic character, because you see him just having on like stands, being a bit of a dickhead to people. Whereas in this film, you really get the reason as to why he's had a messed up childhood and
you see more of his vulnerability and the reason why he is the way he is. You get more of his motivation, and it does make you more sympathetic towards him.
Absolutely. I want to also shout out to Kurt Russell, because I don't know whether either picked up on this, and I might be wrong, but I'm fairly sure that when he's going for a piss at the campfire, he's whistling "Brandy, You're a Fine Girl" as well, which is a really nice motif. When he's whistling, I think he's whistling that song, which again is bringing that back.
I think so, yeah. I think
again, so. Shout out to Kurt Russell as well, because he gives an amazing performance. Because he could have phoned this one in a little bit, but he never does.
No, he doesn't.
Throughout the film, he's incredibly good.
Yeah, which to be honest, that's what makes the best superhero films, to actually have somebody that is doing more than dialing it in for an antagonist.
Yeah, and I think as well, the sort of, I think obviously comic book readers would know Ego the Living Planet might not be the best character in the comics, but I think for people who are general audiences, to curse somebody like Kurt Russell, who in most films is this hero character, people who've ever seen things like The Thing or something, he's this protagonist, this superhero. People will look at and they go, of course he's a good guy, he's Kurt Russell. Whereas actually that's not the case. He's actually playing with our perception of Kurt Russell as an actor and the roles he's had in the past, and using that against us to also buy into this. I think is an amazing thing. But also, we can't continue to talk about the film without quickly taking a trip across the universe to Contraxia, where Yondu and the Ravengers are having a fun time, I assume. Howard the Duck's there just chilling out, which is always good to see. I love Howard.
They're having a bit of a party, yeah.
Having a party. And then Sylvester Stallone pops up. Now, as a 16-year-old, when this film came out, I was like, what the hell? Sylvester Stallone said this? You get this really cool scene, and again, this is very similar to Peter. This is the beginning of grounding Yondu's character, because obviously in the first film he was sort of this like sarcastic, arrogant asshole that you kind of liked because he was funny. Whereas in this one, they're taking an entirely different direction, and again, I think it's just a superb bit of characterization here. You see the other Ravengers, because there's like 100 other squadrons who have kind of shunned Yondu because he helped Ego, but at one time he kept the kid instead of, and again you see Yondu go, but he sworn his allegiance, and obviously there are a few people now, like the man behind you, Taserface, who are thinking, well, Yondu's going a bit soft. Obviously at this point, Kraglin's still on Yondu's side, still backing his captain at this point in the film, and essentially this sets up the next bit of the film where Peter, Gamora, and Drax agree to go with Ego, and Groot and Rocket and Nebula begrudgingly is there to fix the ship, whilst Peter, Gamora, and Drax are away. And this again, Southern Night starts playing, which is a great tune, and the Ravengers land. And Rocket has some fun with some anti-grav things. It's a great scene. I love it. I think Rocket having his own action sequence as well, because Rocket at this point again, I like what James Gunn does in this film because, it was a risk because people loved the first Guardians of the Galaxy, and they could have just done the same thing again and used the characters in the same way. But no, this time you get Rocket, being a bit more unlikable. Obviously they redeem it towards the end of the film, but at this point, Rocket's been possibly the worst of the characters in terms of his perception to the audience because he's been that. But he has this really fun action sequence where he's not only like throwing people up in the air and you get this amazing wide shot of seeing one side of the forest and some of these Ravengers go out, you see the other side of the forest and these other Ravengers pop up. But then you get a great bit as well when he's jumping on them, putting like electrical clamps on their heads and then setting off.
Yeah.
And they all, it's a really fun sequence. I think Southern Nights as well is a great song to put beside it as well, just because it's a bop. That it's kind of the opposite to the songs we had so far, where they added like a meaning to the characters, whereas this song's just a fun song.
Yeah, it's just like we're going to have a fun moment in this film, so here's a fun song to listen to while we're doing it.
And I also think it's a risk to have Again, I like the fact that James Gunn takes risks as a filmmaker. I mean, that's why I'm really excited about Suicide Squad whenever it comes out later this year, because I feel like he's going to go in a different direction to what the Warner Brothers went the first time. Is that he goes for things that perhaps you wouldn't suspect. So to have an action sequence with a raccoon against hundreds of men or other alien creatures of full size, it's a great little sequence. It's charming, it's funny because it's Rocket, and that he's thought about every individual thing that he set up, all the traps and how to use them and how to execute it. And so unfortunately, Yondu's Yaka Arrow comes in and he doesn't want to kill the Guardians. To be fair, I agree with Yondu here. He's like, why would we kill the Guardians of the Galaxy? There's no point. That would just get us in more trouble. Let's take a quarter of it, and then your guy Taserface goes, we can't take 25%. That's like a third of the profit. And then obviously, which is great because Taserface is probably the biggest twat of the film. Taserface. But I like this. I like the sequence.
Yeah, it's good, and it's a nice sort of it's a nice little sort of introduction to Taserface as well, actually, because I know that he was deliberately kind of brought in to be a dumbass, basically, and he doesn't let down.
He was essentially brought in to be what you would perceive a Ravenger to be, rather than what the Ravengers could become under Yondu. And because obviously the Ravengers are meant to be sort of characters that are perhaps not the most clean or not the most well-minded. And I think Taserface shows that in the same way. Like, let's go for the money. Let's not think about the repercussions of taking away the Guardians of the Galaxy from the universe. You know what I mean? Whereas Yondu's think like the bigger picture is like we can still do what we do lower down and still make a decent amount of cash, but then we don't have to worry about things because the Guardians are still around. And obviously that perceives the other Ravagers who are a bit small-minded perceives that as being, Yondu's gone soft. Turns out there's this big mutiny. A lot of the Ravagers get killed out of space, and that's a very dark scene for what we've seen in the film thus far. Actually, I think these are the only scenes in the film as a viewer, and for good reason, that I don't like watching, like the torture of Baby Groot, or the ones where the Ravengers who are side with Yondu get tortured. Those are the only scenes where, as a viewer, I'm not enjoying the film, but for the right reasons.
I mean, that's right. You're not supposed to enjoy those bits, but I think they're necessary to kind of sell the peril that they're in, and actually kind of also to get to hit home what a good influence Yondu is on the Ravagers. How without him in charge, this is what happens.
Because again, I think the good thing James got done as well. Obviously, Yondu is he's not like this dude's wrestling to him. He's not a babyface. He's not he doesn't think about things in the cleanest way and how to do it the correct way. But he's smart. He doesn't just do bad things for the sake of doing bad things. He does things that will benefit him in the best way to do so.
Yeah, he's not needlessly cruel.
And this scene as well, like the worst scene in the film is when they're dousing alcohol on Baby Groot. That's why I want to punch you in the face. But because that's baby, nobody can touch Baby Groot because he's just a legend. I mean, he gets his own back wonderfully in a
when they get him in the little Ravagers outfit and stuff.
I also want to know, why do they have that?
I mean, who
Any
knows?
theories?
Maybe there was like a little mascot on the. Maybe there was like a little mascot on the sort of on the sort of front steering panels of their spaceship. In their sort of main pilot crew, and they
Maybe.
just removed it from there and put it on Groot.
Yeah, exactly. Um, I think actually now obviously there's things have deviated. Let's actually talk about the whole Ravager plotline first. I think because obviously the main crux of the film is the ego plotline, but I think to pop back and forth will be a bit tiresome for the listeners or viewers. So I think
Yeah.
so obviously the Ravager plotline, it's not as long because they obviously converge at the end of the final act. So essentially there are essentially three big scenes. There's one scene where everybody gets taken away and Nebula disappears because she's going to go find Gamora and try and kill her.
Yeah.
So that she gets taken out of the equation very quickly. Nebula, she kind of joins the other plotline, but she's necessary for this plotline because she shoots Yondu in the head.
Yeah.
So Yondu and Rocket are in prison after a great scene where Rocket makes fun of Taserface's name. He goes, obviously, he goes, you know, when you woke up in the morning and you were like, what name's going to put the fear of God into people? Taserface. I think as well, the good thing is Bradley Cooper's such a smart voice actor that he puts the sarcasm very well into Rocket's voice and and the CGI is great as well. Because obviously at this point, the technology Disney have and Marvel have, they can make anything work. I think that's really cool. You have the scene with Groot, being bullied, and then you have the Great Escape, where essentially not only does Groot get everything wrong in the funniest way, at one point he severs off someone's toe, which is fairly grim. And he's meant to get the Yaka arrow, and that's when we see Kraglin, turn back to supporting Yondu, and he knows he's done wrong because he's seen a bunch of his friends die. And he's like,
Yeah, and I mean, for me, that scene where Yondu, Rocket, and Groot reclaim the ship is my favorite scene in the film.
"Oh, it
I think
has to
it's
be.
I think it's brilliant.
It's the most
You
triumphant."
know?
Um, I
Yeah,
think it's the most
and
triumphant.
the fact they fucking blow up three quarters of the ship and then just escape in the last quarter of it,
I
it's
think
it's
as well
it's
the
brilliant.
fact again it's scored by another just bot, which is Jay and the Americas come a little bit closer.
Yeah,
Because obviously Rocket has this thing throughout the whole film as well. He does at the start. He likes to do work listening to Peter's tunes. So he asks Kraglin, "Do you have any of Peter's songs left on the ship?" So that comes on, and you just see Yondu and Groot and Rocket kill everybody.
yeah, and that arrow does some fucking work.
And
It was
yeah, I
really
think my
does.
favorite moment as a viewer, especially a first time viewer, is when you see after Yondu's killed all the nameless Ravengers, you see him in the arrow meets Taserface and it misses, and you're like, what? And then actually he's being smart about it and he blows up the ship. Um, and then you get the great moment as well with Taserface contacts the Sovereign and he's like, I have one request. Let them know. Let your high priestess know who told you this information. And she's like, "What's your name?" Taserface. And then she laughs. And she laughs. I think it's great. It's hilarious.
Yeah, I actually cannot walk past a branch of the popular stationers without going paper chase.
That's a good one. Our paper chase closed down here locally, so
Oh, okay.
sad. Do you need to get any Bic pens? It was always the right place. You know what I mean? You need to get any Bic pens. Best place to go. Now it's the W.H. Smith's job.
I mean,
There's
that
stuff like
said,
that paper chase.
you
Just
can pick up your copy of Doctor Who magazine in W.H. Smith, whereas you couldn't in Paper Chase. So
that's a good, paper chase. That's now going to become a thing. Essentially, after this whole ordeal of the Ravengers being dead, Yondu, Rocket, Yondu and Rocket have this amazing scene actually, where Rocket's still in a bit of an asshole, and Yondu essentially calls him out and goes, "I know why you're like this. I know why you're doing this. You know, because the people that made you didn't give a crap about you." And he goes, "I know this because you are me. We are the same. We have gone through the same sort of thing. So I know exactly why
Yeah.
you do what you do and why you do it." It's this great scene where essentially it just levels Rocket's character, and it kind of highlights to him the importance of the family he now has and why he needs to hold on to that, you know. And
Yeah.
because it's kind of redemption for both characters, where they both realize that what they've been doing this whole time is nowhere near as important as the family they've now made. You know, and I think it's just a great scene. I mean, Michael Rooker's brilliant as well, and credit to him as well because he's acting against nothing. It's not like he's acting against another person here. He's acting against Sean Gunn in a mocap suit because obviously Sean Gunn does the mocap for Rocket. So credits to him. I think Michael Rooker is the MVP of the film for me. I don't know about yourself. But
yeah, I mean, I loved him in the first film. I love him in this. I love him in pretty much everything I've seen him in. You know,
even
yeah.
The Walking Dead, which he doesn't make it out of for very long, he's great in that as well.
That's pretty serious.
Yeah, but he's not in every episode, though, is he? He sort of disappears for a
Not
bit,
in every
comes back.
episode, but he's not in every episode, but he does come back in series 3. You know, and with the kind of machete arm, doesn't he?
Yeah.
You know, so
Um,
yeah, he's quite a memorable character, although he's not in it a great deal. Merle Dixon.
good old Merle and Daryl. What a
Yeah,
link.
he's pretty. He's undoubtedly my favourite racist hillbilly. Is Merle
And
Dixon.
there are probably a lot of them. So
Well, there aren't many on my favourites list, I have to say.
no, no. And then on the flip side of this obviously we have the ego plotline. Essentially, you see essentially once Peter, Drax, and Gamora head off, you get the Chain, obviously, which is Fleetwood Mac, which is a great song. I mean, it's all about family and keeping on to that. Again, great picks from James Gunn here, keeping the chain together, the family chain. It's sort of there's a double meaning because at the start of the film it's all about Peter's biological chain, whereas at the end of the film it's all about the new family is made. So when it comes back later on in the final act, it's about a different family chain compared to this one in the first act, which I think is again a brilliant piece of filmmaking. And essentially, this travel to Ego's planet gives us a good couple minutes to learn about Mantis as a character and what she's about. I love the little bet that Drax and Peter have about Drax thinking that Mantis's antennae are specifically for doors. And Peter goes, "If it's not doors, I win." And
anything but doors. Anything but doors.
yeah, and again, I think it's really good. And you see what Mantis's powers are, and you get the whole sexual love joke about Gamora, and Drax laughs, and it's great. And you find out that she essentially helps Ego sleep because he doesn't sleep very well for reasons we'll come to think of later. Because I can't imagine a man that's done the things has done in the past sleep very well, to be honest. But yeah, it's just a great scene as well because you get more time with these characters. Unlike the Rocket and the Ravager thing, which keeps moving, this is a very slow plot line, which some viewers might not like. I've seen that be a criticism about the film. I like the fact that this film takes time with these characters.
Yeah, I like the fact that you get to see. I like the fact you get to see a more subtle side to, you know, particularly Drax. You know, you get to see a more relaxed side to Drax.
He has my second favorite scene in the film. It's nothing that he actually does. It's the scene where Mantis touches him on the shoulder after he talks about his family, and she starts crying a lot. But he is just stone faced, looking at the sunset, which tells you all you need to know. And I think, you know, anybody that's ever lost anyone or anything like that, you know, like we were talking about earlier, I think it's a great allegory for that, and I think shows Drax's strength as a person to not let his emotions get the better of him.
And you know, he also has the line about you know, there are people who dance and there are people who don't, and I think there's something very true in that. You know, in terms of trying to find your soulmate or whatever, you can't match a dancer with a non-dancer.
Yeah, exactly. And it turns out that Gamora does dance, which is why her and Peter are compatible leaving this film. Um, Um, but yeah, I think as well, in terms of acting, Michael Rooker is my MVP, but in terms of character, Drax is my MVP because I think he also has the joke that gets the most out of me, which is the whole. Again, I'm skipping forward a bit here, but just talk about Drax for a bit. You know, when Ego's showing them around and giving them the tour of his history, and he goes, my father would tell the story about impregnating my mother every winter solstice." And obviously everyone's like, "That's disgusting," and he goes, "What? I think it's a beautiful story." I think as well the fact
Yeah.
that you see Batista's acting chops, you can tell he's improved over the 3 years. Not that he's bad in the first film, but here he has much more subtlety to how he responds to things. And,
Yeah, there's more for him to do in this. You know,
yeah,
there's undoubtedly more for him to do in this. You know, and I mean, had he had more to do in the first film, who knows, he may have done it. But there's more for him to do in this, and yeah, he doesn't disappoint.
no, he doesn't disappoint. And like I said, his obviously, I mean, his plot is more adding up to Infinity War and taking down Thanos. So there'll be a lot to talk about Drax, especially talking about that film.
Yeah.
Even though he's not in it very much, but he gets a lot of small moments within that film as well. Here we kind of serves the emotional anchor because you see, especially later on, Peter and Gamora get a bit overwhelmed with what's going on because they sort of have this on and off again thing, you know, the unspoken thing, which keeps popping up throughout the whole film, where Peter goes, "It's an unspoken thing," and she's not having any of it. She's like, "What are you talking about?" So yeah, I think Drax is an understated character. For me, I think Mantis is a character that I'm sort of indifferent about. Like I don't love her as a character. I don't hate her as a character. She's just sort of there for me. I think that's always going to stay that way. But I think because
I
the
like I,
first,
li- I like I like I like her relationship with Drax. You know,
yeah, I
I
think
like
that's
her
the
friendship with
strongest.
Drax.
But
You
obviously,
know,
we've not had a film yet, and I think James Gunn did on Guardians 3. But obviously, because we're meant to expect by Infinity War and Endgame that she's, or Infinity War especially, that she's going to be there for a few years. I've obviously still not had much time to grow with the other characters yet. Obviously, Volume 3 will change. I'm fairly sure of it. But
yeah.
right now, she's just sort of like the odd one out still. Um, because obviously the first
Which,
five have.
you know, I mean, it's, you know, in this film, she probably should be because I've only just met her. You
Yeah.
know, in the same way that they're feeling each other out in the first film. You know, they're kind of feeling her out, and she's feeling them out in this one.
Oh God, my laptop just went to Narnia. Sorry about that. My laptop almost went to Narnia. I saved it. But yeah, so I think in this film she's very good because she turns. There's a scene where she almost comes clean with Drax, and Gamora does the old classic film thing where she comes forward at the door, so she doesn't say anything, and we have to wait a bit longer.
Yeah.
And then I'll quickly talk about as well because I think the whole ego Peter thing is the main crux of this film. Is the whole Gamora and Nebula scene? Is that Sparky squeaking a toy? By any chance? I heard.
It might be. It might be Sparky. It might be me.
Was it you by accident? Was it?
Could be. Oh, your picture's gone off.
I'm back. I don't know what
Oh, yeah.
happened there. I'm back. So yeah, I mean, is there anything else to take from the whole Drax storyline of this film? Because essentially that's where he doesn't get very many scenes here because obviously his big end game, as it were, was to take down Thanos. So who isn't brought up in this
Yeah,
film
but
very much?
I think his contribution in this film is important because it, you know, it builds up more of the emotional impact of what he's lost, which is important to actually take us to that point with Thanos. You know, so we don't get to see a huge amount of him here, but what we see is crucial.
Yeah, I entirely agree with that. And I think as well, it makes you sympathize with him a lot more. I think in the first film, not that he was like a mindless drone or something, but he was very much more of a caricature of just a strong, dim-witted, what you'd expect the brute of a group to be. Whereas in this one, they sort of subvert that and they make him more of this sympathetic and empathetic character. You know.
Yeah.
And I think that's important moving forward with these characters, because otherwise the only ones you care about are really Peter and Gamora, which sort of leave the first film with those two being your favorite characters because they have the most depth. Whereas in this film, James decides to give everyone a bit of that. Even Groot, who at this point is a baby, even he gets his moments. Like it was like 70s getting doused with alcohol, and he gets a great line later on in the film, which obviously we hear as "I am Groot," but Rocket translates it to us brilliantly. But yeah, I think the Gamora and Nebula stuff here are the only part of the film for me which sort of fall a bit flat. Only because it sort of feels like James wanted a place to put it within the film, but he needed Gamora in the Peter subplot as well as doing her own thing. And so they essentially just take Gamora out of the way for 20 minutes so that she could have this one scene with Nebula. I feel like that's obviously in the finale, Nebula and Gamora work very well together, but I think that one scene where they're taking out each other and fighting just seems a bit meaningless until the end point in which obviously they find the bodies and stuff. I just felt a bit very different from the rest of the film. It felt sort of like, people speak about Iron Man 2 and it being an Avengers setup. I definitely felt this scene being specifically just for Infinity War to set that up. It felt separate from the story they were telling within the film.
To a degree, but it's also about, again, family and about fatherhood, because, don't forget, we do have that scene with Gamora and Nebula where actually she apologizes to Nebula for the way that Thanos treated her. It's another kind of aspect, if you like, on fathers and how they can fuck people up sometimes.
Yep.
Because you've got these two characters here who, in different ways, have been screwed up by the same man.
Yep. Well put. I think for me the issue is obviously because they literally take Gamora out of the action for like 20 minutes. Because obviously I think it's for me the problem with the scenes more the setup. She gets frustrated very easily because there's literally one scene where she's, like Peter says quite rightly, she told Peter to come here, and now she's getting annoyed that Peter's getting on with her dad, although she feels like there's something going on. She doesn't know it yet. So I don't know. I think it was more the setup of the scene rather than the execution of the scene itself.
Yeah, possibly.
But obviously at the end of that scene, after they have a fight, and Nebula drives like spaceship literally into her. They find these bodies of bones. Meanwhile, Mantis has told Drax what's going on, and it's all kind of setting up. But let's rewind a little bit to the whole Ego and Peter relationship, which is sort of the crux of this film. Not only when you first arrive on the planet Ego is it colorful, it's beautiful, which sort of is a deception of what is truly lying underneath, which is a disgusting, rotting heart type thing going on down there. But also you get George Michael's "My Sweet Lord" again, another brilliant song which relates what's going on at the time.
George Harrison.
I said George Michael.
You just put George Michael in the Beatles.
I did. The substitution. George Harrison, my bad. It's not George Michael. It's not Wham. It's George Harrison. Thank you for that, John. Which again is a great song about what's going on in the time of "I really want to see you, really want to be with you," which again is all about Peter and his dad.
I mean, it's one of the most beautiful songs ever written.
Yeah.
In fact, this film features a couple of the most beautiful songs ever written. We'll get onto the other one towards the end,
which I think is I know exactly what song you're talking about. And you get these great scenes where Peter's always wanted to play catch with his dad, so Ego kind of tricks him into thinking, because Ego essentially, you don't know this is the first time viewer, but Ego's testing out whether Peter has a celestial gene. So you see the scenes where it's like, Peter, focus yourself, see if you can become one with the planet. And he does. He's able to create these light beams and join the planet, and he creates this ball, and they play catch together. It's all wonderful and beautiful. And then you get this great scene as well where Gamora and Peter dance to I believe it's Sam Cooke's what's the song called? Bring It All Back to Me.
Bring it on home to me.
Bring it on home to me, in which Peter brings up the television show Cheers. And they almost get together, but then they recluse because Peter, he's not becoming big-headed, but he's beginning to get comfortable with Ego, and Gamora feels like he's leaving his new family behind and only seeing Ego as his family, and it's all kicking off. So she disappears, and that kind of sets up her. Which again, that's only a bit of the fit that if I had a small minor nitpick, because I love this film to pieces, it would be that because Gamora sort of backtracks on what she actually wanted for Peter. She sort of backtracks on it for no reason. She's sort of like, oh, you only want to be with him now. Well, it's like you told him to go, you know. So that's a thing that kind of
but I think it's kind of I think that she didn't see Ego being a rival with her for Peter's time.
Yeah,
if you get what I mean.
Yeah, no, I understand that.
She wanted to see Peter happy, but she didn't think about the consequences of that. In that means that actually there's going to be somebody else that's Peter spending time with.
Yeah. And yeah, I think it's more of a start. Like, I'm like, obviously because I think I know what score I'm going to give at the end, but I think I know what score you're going to give it on the end as well, just because we love both these films. So I'm fairly sure we hold them in both high regard. So if I had to get the smallest nitpick, because the rest of this film was bloody brilliant. You get this amazing scene as well after they've had a fight where Ego comes over to Peter and gets the entire reason of Brandy, you're a fine girl wrong. He manipulates the song and the meaning of the song entirely incorrectly to kind of manipulate Peter's feelings of how he should be feeling with the whole, my love, my lady is the sea, which is just not the meaning of the song whatsoever, and not how he used it when he was trying to get with Meredith earlier on in the flashback that we saw. He manipulates it as a means to an end for him, and we get and it kind of shows Ego's true. At that point, obviously, we don't know Ego's a bad man, but we see him sort of conversing him away from the Guardians, and that's when we sort of get these feelings of maybe this is not all it looks to be.
Right. Yeah, there could be something else going on here.
And then we get the amazing scene where he takes Peter back into, like, I guess, his great hall of his history, and he goes, "There's one thing I didn't tell you, Peter. When I went out looking for reality, what I didn't expect to find was something so," and it cuts back to like a mid shot of them together, and he goes, "disappointing." And Peter, then he kind of tricks Peter and takes over his mind and shows him eternity and all the things he could have. And it's going so well for him when he mentions that actually he doesn't care about anyone else but himself. Anyone else but himself. He only cares about what he's concerned with, taking over the whole universe, and Ego should be anything about. And it's all going well for him. Peter's obviously not with it, but Peter's under his spell until he says the words of, because obviously Peter's sort of still with it. He says a few things like, "What about my new family?" And he says, "What about my mother?" And he goes, "Oh, I loved your mother." It's such a shame I put that tumor inside her brain, and obviously that turns the spell off, and Peter goes ape shit.
Like the way that he plays that, it's like, I couldn't say goodbye to her for another time. I couldn't leave her a third time or whatever. That's why I had to put the tumor in her brain. And like that is the point that you go,
no. Because start this film, you get things like, "Oh, why did you leave her?" And you get the amazing, I think that's been seen earlier on, where Ego goes, "You don't know what it's like to not live on Earth without her." And he goes, "Actually, yes, I do. I had to watch her die." And people that say Chris Pratt's not a good actor, show them this film, because there are scenes where he is going toe to toe with Kurt fucking Russell.
Excellent.
And you get the scene as well where you get the scene, like we said as well, where the spell goes off and he just literally shoots the form that Ego is. And then you see that actually it doesn't harm him at all, really, because it's not really his true form. The true form is the planet. So it's kind of like a sort of like a illusion he's putting up, and he turns into David Hasselhoff for a brief moment, which is kind of a nice little reference. Anything with the Hoff in it is sort of funny. I was kind of sad now looking at it, obviously, since you introduced me to the song for your birthday Zoom, that Looking for Freedom wasn't in this film. That would have been even funnier.
It would have been quite funny.
But yeah, great. And then unfortunately, the Ego essentially, I don't know how to describe it, brings up like a tentacle or something and literally sticks it in Peter's chest. It's sort of like extracting the celestial gene outside of Peter to power these plants. And you see the plants on Earth and all the plants everywhere else, and they like begin to put this big cloud that engulfs these planets. And it's all going well, and Ego's doing his big villain speech until again, Rocket and Yondu put a rocket ship to his face, sort of similar to what Nebula did to Gamora, and it sort of sets up our final act. But I mean, this is obviously the emotional crux. So, John, how do you think this line compared to the first one? Because I think Ego as a villain is much more compelling than Ronan. Not that Ronan isn't a good villain, but I think he has much more purpose.
Oh yeah, I mean the motivations are a lot more unique. It's a lot more interesting. But Russell absolutely smashes it out the park. With what he's got to do, and it's I think it's a lot more personally linked to the Guardians as characters, if you like. So yeah, he works a lot better as an antagonist, I think.
Yeah, I think as well as the overall villain, because he's not got a power stone or anything else like that. So power him up like Ronan did. He had the power stone, which is the MacGuffin of the moment. This is just how strong Ego is as a character, like as a villain, how much power he has. And like you said, like I said, they smash the thing into Ego, and it kind of it kind of stops him for a few minutes. They can get into the heart of Ego and things like that. And essentially, they use Mantis to make him literally go to sleep. Like the whole planet sleeps for a bit, which brings to possible. I think they use the teaser footage, if I remember correctly, of Rocket with the detonator and showing Groot which button to hit, which is really good. And you get the scene of tape.
Going through it about 3 times.
And he goes, anyone got any tape? I want to put tape over the death button.
Why would you ask if you're that kind of tape if you don't have tape?
Yeah. And then as well, above Ego's plenty of Kraglin in another ship, and Wham Bam Shamalam's playing, and then all of the Sovereign ships come in. Unfortunately, though, Yondu can't hear him because they're underground, but eventually it gets through, and then you get the oh shit, and there's like another 100 or however odd ships about from the Sovereign, and you get a nice little fight. Meanwhile, Groot's in the inside Ego. It's not disgusting because it actually is, but and he's got to put a bomb to his brain. Meanwhile, everyone's getting their little licks in. You got Groot. They got Rocket shooting his gun everywhere. You've got Peter fighting about killers. You've got Yondu with his jacket arrow doing some good stuff. Meanwhile, you got Mantis actually on the ground, like making sure that Ego is asleep. And so you get this amazing sort of group shot. And it's all like they're all together. And then in the funniest thing, it pans out and Mantis just gets whacked by a meteor. And you get the best line, Mantis, look out. But 5 seconds too late.
Which obviously means that he's not asleep anymore.
And then everything starts to just take hold. You get the tentacles back. You get these rocks that begin to form because obviously he can manipulate it to however he likes. So everything begins to not work, and essentially everyone gets incapsulated. Even baby Groot sort of, gets squeezed inside Ego. You get Gamora and Nebula sort of falling through the cracks of Ego and almost dying. It's an amazing moment where Nebula saves Gamora, and that's sort of like the unity of them. They get a scene later on in the film. But throughout that film, you had when there's a scene early on, which is a very small scene. I don't think it's very big. However, it's when Yondu and Peter are talking to each other, and he's saying how he uses the arrow. And he goes, "I don't use my head when I think about the arrow." And you get a callback to this very, very briefly in the final act. But unfortunately, Yondu can't finish the sentence. He goes, "Boy, I don't use my head when I use the arrow. I use my..." And he gets cut off. And then you see Peter literally turn into Pac-Man. As the chain again starts playing, like I mentioned earlier on, and he goes one-on-one with his dad in a celestial battle. How would you describe it, John?
I mean, it's just epic, isn't it? You know, the whole thing is just the whole thing's just epic. It's 5 minutes of just the best kind of action that you'll see.
Yeah, I mean, obviously you get the literal Pac-Man reference where he literally, and you also get things like Peter controlling rocks and punching them. And the good thing about this as well, they do a really nice trick with Kurt Russell's makeup. Of he looks ghastly when he comes down to underneath, because he's been hurt a little bit anyway by Mantis, and the fact that they've literally driven trucks into him and they've hurt him a little bit, that they've dug into his core, which took some time. So you can see that he's not on his 100% best. At this point, Groot's activated the bomb, and they've sent Drax and Mantis up to the surface because Mantis is knocked out, and it hurts Drax's nipples, which are one of the best understated jokes of the entire film. Drax talking about his nipples is something I never thought I'd want to see, but I'm certainly happy it happened. Yeah, it's one of those. This last bit as well, it packs an emotional gut punch. You get the whole "I'm Mary Poppins, y'all." The whole Mary Poppins. Is he cool? Yeah, he cool. Moment, which is kind of like Yondu's last hurrah. You get the whole thing where Rocket's like, right, we got to go, Yondu, and he's like, no, you got to let me finish this. Let me finish what I started. And you get Rocket gives him one pack and one like ring to help him get up to the surface. And you get the best Iron Groot in the history of Iron Groots, because obviously Yondu can't understand it, and Rocket goes, "Welcome to the freaking Guardians of the Galaxy." Only he didn't use freaking. It's possibly the best thing that Groot has ever said. And then Gamora gets put up to the ship. She realizes Peter's not there, and then Rocket has to heartbreakingly knock her out. You get Drax on the comms upstairs, not knowing why Peter's not there. They're all in the ship. They're all leaving because Peter's not there, and you're thinking Peter's not going to make it. And you get one of the best lines as well, where Ego says, "If you kill me, Peter, you'll be like everybody else." And he goes, "What's so wrong with that?" And Peter supposedly dies, but you see Yondu save him at the last second. And then you get possibly the best line in the film, the legitimate best line, where he goes, "He may have been your father, boy, but he wasn't your daddy." And then
Wasn't your daddy.
And then they go up to the air, and then Peter so he realizes that actually Yondu's not going to make it, and you see Yondu unfortunately freeze up and die, and it's you wouldn't think you'd care for Yondu based on the first film, but actually I think I cried. I didn't cry this time I'm watching it, but it does it does get you in the feels.
I cried in the cinema. I cried yesterday, and I'm crying now.
It's one of those things that you don't expect it, and how James Gunn did the script to, bring justice to Yondu's character is insane.
It's the redemption. It's the redemption. It's the fact that he's redeemed, and that Peter realizes that he's been looking for something that was there all along. That Yondu has been more of a father to him than Ego ever would be.
Yeah. And then you get the actual bit that makes I don't think anyone can watch this without crying. When you get the whole funeral sequence with Yusuf and Cat Stevens's song. What's the song called? I need help though.
It's father and son.
Father and son, yeah.
Just to clarify, you said Yusuf and Cat Stevens are actually the same person.
Oh, is it? Oh, shit.
Cat Stevens and Yusuf are the same guy.
Oh no! I've made two very monumental stories.
He in the 60s he performed and 70s and performed under the name Cat Stevens, and he converted to Islam and changed his name to Yusuf Islam. Now he performs under the names Cat Stevens or Yusuf. So yeah, they're the same person, mate.
My apologies. I've made two artist errors. I've made two artist errors here.
Yeah, I mean, it is. Father and Son by Cat Stevens. I mean, it's a beautiful song. It's perfectly used. And I mean, I remember being in the cinema with my sister, obviously when they did the funeral scene, and hearing the start of that, and just looking at my sister and thinking to myself, oh God, because like I knew I was going to go, and yeah.
I think it's one of the scenes as well where like the lyric, like it's the epitome of what I said earlier, where James Gunn knows when he's picking these songs, why he picks them, and what purpose they're gonna serve, and how they're gonna, make the audience feel. And I think it's the epitome when you see. Also, they do a really good job here intercutting scenes of the film as well. So you get a scene where Peter gives Kraglin his arrow, and it's like we want you to have this, which is really sweet. You get a scene between.
It's really poignant because you get to see all of them quite sort of thoughtful and quite just taking in what's happened.
Yeah. I think my favorite one, although it's understated, is Baby Groot and Peter listening to the song, sharing the. I also like the fact that you're allowed to incorporate some jokes in here, like the fact that for some reason Peter's infatuated with the Zoom, which died out after a year of being made. Nobody uses Zooms even in 2017, so they were even allowed to make a joke about Zooms, which I thought was really good, because it's not like a joke that's meant to distract from what's going on, because it's still a very humble moment. And obviously, because Peter doesn't know modern technology, he takes that as a big gift, and it's great. And you get the bit where all the other Ravengers come here, and you see Stallone again and stuff like that. And
the fact that obviously, having earlier in the film sort of disowned him from the Ravengers, and Stallone telling him that he wouldn't get a Ravager's funeral, the fact that he does now get a Ravager's send off, and that they realise that he was right and what he did was correct. I mean, it was always going to happen. Like the minute they killed him off, it was always going to happen. But even then, when they kind of delivered it, and you've got the various different Ravager crews in attendance because Rocket put a message out to everybody. It's perfect. It's perfection.
Yeah, I think it is. I think as well, it's one of those it's one of those it's one of those endings. If you told somebody before this film came out, oh, you're going to be crying at Yondu's funeral, you'd be like, nah, that's not possible. You wouldn't be. You'd be like, that's not. But you actually leave this film going, oh, I wish we had more of Yondu as actually part of the Guardians. You wish you had that, and you leave not having that, and you leave the Guardians in a different place from start to finish. I mean, look, the post-credit scenes in this film, they're said to be more funny, so I won't really go into those. You get the one with Adam Warlock, with Aisha, which will probably go into Guns 3. There's not much to talk about much. You get the old Guardians, and Miley Cyrus gets a cameo, which still makes me laugh to this day. You get the one at the end with Sandy, and you get the one with Teenage Groot.
The Teenage Groot, which I quite like. I like the one with Teenage Groot. I just the entire room just covered in sort of roots and shrubbery.
Yeah, but there's not much to talk about. I mean, the best thing about the credits is Guardians Inferno, which is actually a bop, and obviously to get Zardu Hasselfrau himself on the track is a particular.
Yeah, I mean, they got him in the film. They got him in the film, so he was probably contractual. He was probably like, "I'll do a film if you let me do a song."
Yeah. So essentially you need the film. Again, this is one of those MCU films that's different because James Gunn uses the post-credits as a thing to help his own universe. Most of the time in MCU films, post-credits sort of adjacent to what you've just seen, and like what's coming up in the future of the next film, or but this is all about essentially the future of what's going on with the Guardians and stuff like that. So I thought that was really smart. But John, look, do I even need to ask you what your number score is? Because we gave the first one a 10. I'm fairly sure we both can give this one a 10 as well, right?
I mean, if it were in my power, the first one got a 10. If it were in my power, this would get an 11. But you can only go to 10. So it's a harder 10 than the first one got. It's a more bumping 10.
Yeah, you know,
Um,
if you could even go higher on a 10, then
yeah, if I could, then I would. But you know, you can't, because you can't have
yeah,
11 out of 10, because then it's not 11 out of 10, it's 11 out of 11.
yep.
It's just silly.
So yeah, and obviously we haven't got a Guardians film yet. We've got the Guardians Christmas special, which if the podcast is still going on in a little bit, if the podcast is still going on by the time the Guardians Christmas special and Guardians 3 comes out, which that's kind of scary to think that if the podcast is still going on, what episode number would be on at that point. But if it's still going on by then, I'm fairly sure. I mean, who knows? We might have like we might have like a massive group cinema trip and all go together to watch something. That's
why, why would the podcast not still be going on?
I have no idea.
Is there something you're aware of? Are there legal things afoot? We're about to be
No,
taken off air.
eventually I want to make a timeless podcast film, but I feel like once I've made that, like I can't really continuing the podcast would be mute.
Right, the timeless podcast film. So what is it? Will it be like a sort of office-esque fly on the wall
It would no,
pastiche of
it
the
would be ludicrous.
podcast
So I mean,
with
I
you
have a
as
plot.
with you
I
as
have
kind of with you as a kind of Alan Partridge, you know?
no. So it'd be more like a strange. I'll tell you some of my ideas off record. So in case I use any of them before it gets made or whatever, then
No, I like the idea of a kind of docudrama timeless podcast thing where everybody's a little bit of a pastiche of themselves.
yeah. Except Adam's just Adam because the pastiche of Adam is just Adam. You know.
And Beef's just a pastiche anyway.
Yeah. I'd have to say, man. I mean, look, but I'm still trying to get the contract sorted out with Sparky to appear, but the money's a bit high, so we're just working out some things with Sparky. So as soon as
I mean,
that's
it's
done,
because you're spending all your money. It's because you're spending all your money on Gallifrey Forever 97. That's why.
yeah. God's sake, Reese.
You know,
yeah.
the production budgets of this, the production budgets of this podcast are minuscule. I mean, I've had to provide my own Taserface background.
Taserface. Not that John owns that photo, just in case anybody gets upset. But yeah,
I don't know who. Well, I mean, I don't know who owns it. I just googled it,
and he took it for his own use, which is fine because he technically didn't use it for anything paid.
Yeah,
but
I'm not using it for profit. Not using it for profit at all.
In terms of John on the podcast, it won't be too long until he's back because it will be for Infinity War, or it'll be for we'll do a SummerSlam pod at some point as well. Yeah. Or if one of John's 20 Doctor Who stories gets mentioned.
One of Doctor Who stories. Yeah, what's the next Doctor Who story you're going to be doing?
So obviously we pick it up from random. We have our randomizer and we do it that way because me and Owen haven't seen certain things. So next one we're doing is Time Meddler, which I've never watched. Owen did watch it when Titus Monkey did her watch along.
You're forcing Owen to watch the Time Meddlers and do a podcast.
I didn't know, but I didn't realize when I read it out and then his reaction was mute for a few seconds. I realized, oh shit! But we won't go into it anymore on air
for legal reasons. We won't go into this, but listening to Owen Luckhurst talk about the Time Meddler, I'm going to tune in for that, and I would suggest you all too. And if you hear a sort of scraping sound on the podcast as you're listening, that will be Owen's teeth grating together.
Yes, Christ, scary times. For poor old Owen. I also want to say as well, thank you so much for the stuff on the podcast recently. I mean, the subscribe at one point I literally gained a few subscribers every day, which is weird. It's stopped now, but because I'm posting a little bit, but people really liked it. So that's pretty cool, especially at this level, just to gain one subscriber one day, gain two another day. I just keep going slowly because I know people on YouTube aren't, the listenership is more on Spotify and things like that. But checking out each channel and stuff, I do plan to make more content now that I've got free time and I'm not at uni for the next few months. So there should be other things coming out once I can figure out what to do. But I also, if everyone else asking, I do plan to eventually re-upload the old podcast episodes onto YouTube in some format because I do have them saved on a hard drive. I just need time again to upload them more and dump them. Because
That's a scary prospect.
Because obviously I had someone message me on Twitter and go, well, I've just got into your podcast. I see it goes from episode like 11 to episode 41. Where's the rest of it? And I didn't obviously I forgot that I stopped uploading to YouTube for a little bit. So but if anyone's binging this show, I don't know why. Not that I'm complaining, but why would you do that to yourselves? So let alone they're probably going to be very confused when they get to like episode 17 and all the hosts start changing over.
It's very bizarre.
But John, anything else you want to shout out? Anything I'm going to be doing in the next few weeks that you're excited to talk about? Anything on television that you want people to check out? You know what's coming out and anything like that?
Oh gosh.
Hell in the Sun.
Well, aside from the things we've already talked about, I would point everybody towards series 6 of Inside Number 9, which is showing at the moment, and is, it's the best thing on telly. It's always the best thing on telly when it's on telly. And the great thing about it is that they're all one-off episodes, so you don't need to have seen any of them before.
Is it similar like Black Mirror then? So like no episodes linked, they're sort of all adjacent to one another.
Nothing linked. So they're all one-offs. So you can literally pick up wherever. And I think the previous 5 series are all still on iPlayer as well. So I'm going to point towards that, because every new series, there always seems to be some people that come to it afresh. I know my sister's literally just binged the first 5 series, and he's now completely up to date with it. And it is incredibly thought-provoking, moving, shocking, funny television. The no 2 episodes are the same. I'll just point towards that.
I also want to give a shout out something that would have already been out based on, it's not out yet, but based on when this gets released on Monday, would not tomorrow night when we're recording this, but Friday night when this is out, the Friday dinner documentary would have come out, 10 years on and a little bit of Squirrel. And I haven't watched it yet, but I'm gonna watch it tomorrow night. I'm probably gonna cry.
Yeah,
I'm fairly sure there'll be an after bit for Paul Ritter, which is gonna be
I'm expecting to have my tissues handy for that as well.
And it's weird to think it's been around for it's a weird thing it's been around for 10 years, because it's one of those shows that I didn't watch from series 1. I sort of watched it on Netflix when there was like up to series 3, and then from then on I would have been a bit young at the time, we'll say 10 years ago. So
obviously I watched all of it last summer in the space of about a month.
Yeah, we should. I remember watching that, and obviously you're a big Mr. Morris fan, because
Mr. Morris. Yeah, Mr. Morris has been appearing in classic EastEnders of late.
There we go, fantastic. But we shall leave you all now. So what I'll say is check the YouTube channel out at Thomas Pod. Links are always everywhere anyway. I have links everywhere. They're on the Twitter. Follow the Twitter at Thomas Pod. Follow me on Twitter at @King_John. Follow John at John Boy Cook. Is that correct? Or is there an underscore in there?
There isn't just John
Boy. I knew an underscore in there. John Boy.
I'm now gonna look to see if there is actually a John Boy Cook. I think there must be, because why else would I have put the underscore? Let's have a little look and see who's going to get my followers. Oh, something went wrong. There isn't a John Boy Cook. It's just John Boy _Cook. I think there must have been a John Boy Cook when I first set the account up in 2009, but he's clearly buggered off. He clearly couldn't compete.
There we go. Well, join me on the show next week when there's either 2 things we're talking about, which will be either the episode, The Time Meddlers from Doctor Who, or it will be me, Owen, and Macaulay talking about the Doctor Who, the movie 21, is it 2180 AD, the Dalek film? I don't know the title.
2150 AD, Dalek Invasion Earth, 2150 AD.
There we go. So me, Owen, and Macaulay will do that, or me and Owen will be back next week talking about the Time Meddler. But until then, stay classy, have a good rest of your week, and bye-bye.
Peace out.